On the phone with us this morning, Dave, we have the 14th District candidate, Tracy Rushing, on the phone with us this morning from White Salmon, Washington. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Yeah. White Salmon, you're across from, I want to say across from Hood River.
Correct.
All
yep.
right.
Yep.
Yeah.
A very shaky bridge drive away.
No kidding. Went down to Portland this weekend. We waved at you. I don't know if you saw us when we went by on the other side, but we were waving. Say, hey, Tracy is living over there. So we appreciate it. Go ahead.
I didn't see you, but, next time climb up on your vehicle, and I might be able to see you from back where I am.
Very good. I'm tall. That might work. We appreciate your time this morning, Tracy. You're a long ways away from the city of Yakima, and, of course, that's part of the interesting aspect of the 14th District is how stretched out we are now. So we probably don't know that much about you up here, so here's your chance to fill us in with the Tracy Rushing story. Tell us a little bit about yourself. From whence do you come, what you do, family, that sort of thing?
Sure. I'll give a brief bio. Feel free to cut me off if I get too long-winded. So I've been living in our district since 2012. Before that, I am actually a Virginia native. I am the daughter of a naval officer and grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. I actually completed both my undergrad and my med school at the University of Virginia, and we ended up coming here. We moved to Portland first in 2010, really driven by the residency programs that we wanted to be doing. We saw throughout medical school, essentially, and when I say we, I mean my spouse and I, the value of a strong primary care system, and really looks to the Pacific Northwest as doing that better than other areas of the country. So our choice was pretty clear for where we wanted to do our training. So we packed up all of our earthly possessions into a wood-paneled station wagon that was his grandmother's back in the 1980s, and that's what got us here. So we spent a couple years in Portland doing our residencies. He started practicing out here around the time that we moved here. He's a family medicine doc. And I initially did my training in pediatrics. During the course of that training, I realized I really liked higher acuity things, higher acuity medicine, and I actually missed seeing adults as well. So I stuck around for a second residency program in emergency medicine, commuted into Portland for that for the next 3 years. And since then, since 2016, I've been working in the ER here locally, which has been a much nicer commute. We live on a little farm that's just north of White Salmon. We're kind of up in the Snowden region. So we're kind of getting our feet beneath us in multiple aspects of life.
So where would you practice? What's the facility where you're at, Tracy?
I'm at Providence Hood River Memorial Hospital.
Okay.
There's not a hospital in White Salmon, right?
There is actually, yeah. So Skyline is the hospital over on our side of the river. Oh. It's a bit smaller, and it's one where my spouse actually does shifts in the ER there. I was looking for something that would give me a little bit higher volume for as far as the number of people that I was taking care of. Sure. And so Hood River sees somewhat higher volume than Skyline does. So that's kind of what drove my choice to work over there.
Are you an adrenaline junkie, Tracy? Do you need the buzz of the emergency room? I mean, if that's the case, going to Olympia is perfect for you because there's an emergency there all the time.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I can't figure it out. I've gotten asked that question a few times before. I think I'm actually a pretty calm person, so I would say less an adrenaline junkie. I certainly don't do, like, the extreme sports and whatnot that a lot of ER docs do. But I like pushing myself, and I like engaging with other people. So I think those sort of things fit really well with emergency medicine. But yeah, I'm not an extreme sports person, if that's kind of what you're getting at.
You're not out there on one of those boards with a parachute or anything right out in your front yard.
Not yet, but I'm going to be entering middle age soon, so maybe that'll change.
Well, I want full disclosure here. I worked for a year and a half at Virginia Tech, so I hope that doesn't color our conversation. That the hokey cavalier thing doesn't get in the way here going forward. Virginia, beautiful place.
It is beautiful, yeah. And if we were still in Virginia right now, then that might have to color the conversation. But since we're over in the Pacific Northwest, I see that as unity at the moment. So I'm willing to let that slide.
We can be pals. Okay. Well, let's talk politics. Is this your first go at the world of politics?
This is. Politics is not something that I ever really aspired to in the past, to be quite honest. My decision to enter this race was really prompted by what I was seeing evolve with the pandemic and what I was seeing affecting the patients that I was taking care of in the emergency department. So, yeah, you might know from just looking at the filing date, I actually filed on the last day to do so when I saw that all of our representatives in our district still remained unopposed.
So, so are you in this, how do I say this? Not just to provide a competition for somebody, but I mean, would you have an agenda and a plan? And let's start with the area of the COVID-19 pandemic. How did the state do, and what would you have done differently?
Yeah, so I think that can be answered on multiple different layers. So I'll kind of try and work my way down, I suppose. The reason that I think that pandemic management is an important aspect to be dealing with right now is not just from the acute health crisis that we're seeing. It's because the pandemic has really magnified or brought to the surface a lot of the chronic issues that are not just present in our healthcare system, but also throughout our society. So I think we're seeing a lot of those things that have been there for a long time. They're just more visible now. And so as far as my plans are concerned, I think this is a wonderful moment in time to really grasp the bull by the horns and figure out the infrastructure that we need to be making our healthcare system better, to be making our community set up better. So that's really big picture plan-wise what I think is very doable at this moment in time. From a pandemic specific standpoint, what I'm seeing in the ER is a combination of obviously individuals and families getting sick, but also what those impacts are for their ability to work and for their ability to take care of their kids. Whether that is them being able to physically go to work, then being able to work from home, and then anyone with kids right now is obviously in a very, very challenging situation with trying to do virtual learning at home and trying to balance school and needing to work themselves. So I think the pandemic management is front and center right now and really needs to be the primary focus in a cohesive way for our community moving forward, because that's how we're going to get our kids back in school. That's how we're going to get our economy flourishing again. That's how we're going to be able to go back to worship. And if we're not tackling that in a cohesive way, this is a virus. It's not something that, follows boundaries at doorways and things like that. So it's something that needs, full community support to be able to get us over the hump with this. I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, it's okay. Keep going.
I was just going to say, Tracy, that there is a different feel and approach on this side of the state. Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed it down there as much. Certainly it exists at the northern end of the district and throughout eastern Washington. If you're talking about a cohesive approach, how do we meld the, hey, we don't love the governor and what he's making us do, as opposed to maybe the west side where it's save us, governor, save us. How do we make the how do you make that connection?
I don't think really. So when you say when you bring the governor up with this, do you mean the mandates and things like that
Sure.
versus? Yeah. Okay.
Well, to set up a dashboard and make rules that really, we are 60-some, almost 70% essential here. We can't work our computers from home. The Apples don't have modems. A lot of us feel that Washington is two different Washingtons, and that a lot of the governor's thoughts and procedures were designed for a place other than ours. And I get what you're talking about, cohesiveness. We all got to be in it together and figure it out. But how do we make the jump from what's going on over there to how we feel things are going on over here?
Yeah. And I think what you bring up with the agricultural industry and how things unfolded in that realm is especially poignant to what we're doing at the moment and what we're doing better now than what we were doing before. When you look at how the coronavirus evolved from March to April to May, it was in the areas like the packing houses in Yakima where people were getting sick at highest rates, and those are the people who predominantly have died from the coronavirus in the Yakima area. So I don't see, mandates from the governor as something that is necessary long-term when we have good plans in place for how to be protecting people. But I don't think it's possible really to argue that packing house workers getting sick is helpful for the agricultural industry. So I think, if our goal is protecting the people who are essential workers at the moment, then that overall is a benefit to the businesses and the agriculture in our area. It's keeping the workforce intact, it's keeping the workforce healthy, and it's allowing people to continue to do their jobs. When people are getting sick, when people are spreading illness, that's when things get shut down. That's when we see our economy bottom out. And those numbers are really what we were seeing in Yakima back in the spring when we had, the highest rates on the West Coast. So yeah, I think the top-down approach is important when we don't know what we're dealing with yet, like a novel virus. But then once you find out more objective information about, what situations are really high risk for transmission, what sort of things actually do help prevent transmission, then you can be, a little bit more nuanced with how you're doing your policies.
Sure, makes sense. Tracy Rushing, can you spend another half hour with us? We'd love to talk more.
Can.
There are other things
Sure.
besides COVID to talk to. We've got to take a break for news here at the bottom of the hour. A couple of our fine sponsors, but we'd love to continue this conversation with you up until the top of the hour. So get your thinking cap on, because we're moving from COVID onto other things, and we'll continue with you in just a moment. And it is the morning news, News Talk 1280 KIT. We're speaking this morning with 14th District Position 1 candidate Tracy Rushing. She is from White Salmon. She is a physician, an emergency room doctor. So should we be calling you Dr. Candidate Rushing, or what's the protocol there, man?
No need for formalities. Just my first name's fine.
I took a quick look at your Facebook page. You have quite the menagerie there. You've got a nice little farm going where you're at, don't you?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, definitely.
Looks like it'd be a lot of fun for those kids. So don't be surprised if Lance and I, who are kids at heart, come down and pet the goats. And I thought I saw a little donkey or something. Yeah.
Tracy, do you ski?
You're welcome anytime.
Do you ski?
So this is going to be a somewhat embarrassing answer. I used to ski when I lived back in Virginia, and now that I have real snow and real mountains, essentially ever since starting my medical residency training and then having kids, I have not skied.
Oh, well, you got a great place for it right there, right across the river, that's for sure. Hood, yeah. Well, it's I guess, we could just jump right there while we talk about the forest and forest protection. There's been a lot of talk about forest protection. You guys down in Oregon, well, not you guys, White Salmon's in Washington. Down in Oregon, though, they've certainly had the fires this year, that's for sure, and we've had them. What do you think? I mean, there's been talk about, maybe cleaning out the forest, ways to clean out the forest. Environmentalists are against that. Where are you at?
I am in favor of responsible forest management for sure. I have been talking with one of my neighbors who actually works with the Department of Natural Resources, and he is one of our local forest managers here in Klickitat County. And obviously, you know, when you're thinking about fire management, what has the potential to burn is step one for figuring out where the high-risk areas are. So, yes, I think we absolutely need to be doing a better job with forest management. And that's going to vary location to location. In some areas, you know, that's the smaller brush. In some areas, that might be the pattern of how the trees are growing. But both how we're potentially clearing out those areas and then how we're also, you know, reforesting areas that our timber industry uses to make sure that those areas stay healthy and lower risk too. Here, especially in Klickitat County, we have a really, really good working relationship between our timber industry and the Department of Natural Resources. So I think the model that I am seeing down here is really what we need to be propagating throughout the state. Again, knowing that geography looks different down here than it does in Yakima, so the strategies may need to be different because of that. But big picture-wise, yes, I think forest management is an important part moving forward.
Good answer, ma'am. Appreciate that. What about state budget? We just heard from your opponent. I don't know if you were listening prior to you coming on, but he's of the opinion that no new taxes are going to be necessary. There is a bit of an economic hit that we've taken, $4 billion, but that we're still pulling in more money than we did in the previous biennium, and so it's just a matter of someone in your business with knowing how to use a scalpel could cut away some aspects of the budget, and we could live within our means. Your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, when I looked at the budget forecast that came out a couple of weeks ago, it does look a bit rosier than I think we were expecting. Had we had this conversation back over the summer, things seemed like they were likely going to be a bit more dire than they're looking right now. I certainly do not think that looking at our budget that we need to talk about increased taxes either. I agree with him. I think that where things stand currently is burden enough on, our communities that are being still affected by job loss and illness at the moment. So when we're looking at how we do the budget, I think the combination of, like you said, the scalpel for where we're going to be potentially needing to make cuts, but then also thinking about how we're doing our funding moving forward. Because looking at our community, there's as families are more impacted by the economic downturn that's happening at the moment, we need to be adjusting potentially, the burden of tax that falls on them. So if we're needing to, reduce taxes on our working families, then we do still need to make sure that that's balanced somewhere else. And that's what I think the conversation is going to really need to be focusing on going into 2021. Part of that is going to be, taking the scalpel and figuring out what needs to be cut to balance our budget, but it's also going to be a reassessment of where the revenue is coming from so that working families are less impacted by the economic downturn.
Well, we have to be true to our calling here. We are a conservative talk radio station. Talking like no need for taxes, they may ask you to turn in your Democrat card. I'm just saying. Tracy, I mean,
turn in my debit card? Is that what you said?
No, your Democrat card. They may just really. They're going to go over there and say, I'm not so sure about more taxes, and all of a sudden it's like Tracy's in a room by herself, no windows, one chair.
They might want your debit card.
Yeah, they may.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think this comes down to too that the fact that this isn't necessarily a partisan issue. I, for example, I'm not someone who's ever been registered with a political party. I'm running as a Democrat, and there are some Democratic values that I do feel strongly about. But I think when we talk about the budget in Central Washington, like you mentioned earlier, this is a very unique area because we have a different array of what our agriculture and industries look like than other areas of the state. So yeah, when we're talking about things like the budget, I think there's a more bipartisan, cohesive, goal for how we're strategizing both our revenue and how we do our taxes.
There you go with that common sense stuff again. You're going to have to knock that off. Tracy, I do have a serious question on this for you, though. We have a very, very partisan state. We are part of the deep blue coast. I mean, there's no question about where the state's Democrats generally come down. You said you hadn't been a party member. What are the things that made you decide? Made you decide to prefer Democrat? What are those values that you think align with yours that makes you have to choose a party? Choose that one.
So right now I'm thinking mostly about what I see as the most active issues in our society at the moment, how that affects my family, how that affects the patients that I care for, and how that's going to affect my kids moving forward. And I think coming from, the role of a healthcare provider, what I think the Republican Party is not doing a good job of right now is tackling the issues with our healthcare system.
Bingo.
So that's the primary driver right now that I think I don't necessarily agree with all of the policy proposals put forward by Democrats thus far in the realm of healthcare, but I think there's more active conversation on that side and more active brainstorming.
Sure.
And that's really important to me. So that's probably number one. Number two is really how we're talking about climate issues at the moment, because I feel like as someone who's trained in science essentially, I'm able to look at the objective data and see what the trend is, and it concerns me that we have these combating principles and essentially haven't made any progress whatsoever over the last decade or so. So that's the other area where I think there's just a little bit more motivation on the Democratic side to move things forward at the moment. Again, being in Central Washington, I think you're absolutely right that this is a unique area because of our industries here, that we need to have a little bit more of a nuanced approach to how we're moving the needle on that. But I think it's doable if we're working in a cohesive way. It's not doable if we're butting heads.
Gotcha. Good answer. Mother of three, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
what are their ages?
They are 2, 4, and 6.
So the 6-year-old would be scratching at the kindergarten or first grade door then.
That's right. Yep.
What's your take on the state has spent a lot of money on education over the last couple of years and trying to implement the McCleary decision and all of that. How do you see the education set up in our state? Obviously, it's important to you. You spent a lot of years pursuing yours. How do you feel about Washington's, school-age education system?
Yeah, so our education system, I think, is well-intended, but I think because of the diversity across our state and how our communities are set up, some areas do much better than other areas. And so I do think we need a little bit more local input into how to be setting up our school systems within our counties to be meeting the needs of our counties. And that, is affecting, it's a whole range of issues from how difficult is it for kids to physically get to school to, what are the jobs that their parents are doing for doing these optimized after-school care to what the actual curriculum looks like. And when I speak of curriculum, I think especially in our area, we need to have a little bit more emphasis on vocational training here. We have great industries that offer great jobs, but, our school system is pretty, regimented right now and doesn't necessarily expand into the realm of vocational training. And I think that's a huge opportunity for us here to have education be partnering with our local industries to be providing, training for the jobs of the future.
Yeah, we are sort of the university track kind of thing for the most part. Let me ask you this.
Right.
There is legislative action that raised a lot of hackles. That was the sex ed bill that Democrats passed, and it was quickly pounced on by parents and families and reformers, and they jumped on signature gathering at a record pace, and referendum 90 now sits on our ballot. Right. If you would have been in the legislature at that time, do you support referendum or the tenets of what is it, 1135 or 39, whatever it is, what referendum's against, that comprehensive sex ed program? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so the Senate bill is what you're referring to?
Yeah, whatever that was that got passed into law, I don't have it in front of me, so... But you know what we're talking about, right? It's a controversial sex ed bill.
Yeah. Yes. So I've read through the bill, and I do support it. I think we do it a disservice by referring to it as a sex ed bill. It is something that I think would be better framed as an avenue to providing increased resources, increased funding to our schools for a comprehensive curriculum. Based on my training as a pediatrician and looking at the curriculum that was proposed for this bill, it is not teaching, frank sex ed to our elementary school kids. The curriculum, when you're looking at the younger ages, is talking about friendships and emotional intelligence. Additionally, it explicitly says in the bill that families do have the option to opt out. So I think the bill is important because it adds resources to schools and communities that do potentially need it for being able to offer these resources to their families. I think it gives flexibility to families to opt out. It clearly says that in the bill that it does. And again, the calling it a sex ed bill is not really that accurate if you look at what the actual curriculum is.
All right. We must cross swords here, Tracy. Stand by. So basically, record numbers of Washingtonians who jumped on this to say no are what? Misreading the bill? We're a bunch of dummies? I mean, why the reaction, do you think, then, that accomplished what it did in massive numbers and in record time to say, no, this isn't what we want? People are saying, I can't even read the details of this, portions of this, to the legislature because, either my face would turn red or somebody would gavel me down because of the graphic nature of that. You don't think that that's part of this, and that we're all misreading it? It's hysteria by the masses?
I don't think it's hysteria by the masses, and I don't think it's necessarily misreading it. But I do think that if you're taking a stand against it, that you do need to know what the actual content is in the bill. And I think with, how we've framed our approach to this bill, it's been more, either sound bites or ads that, say one way or the other without actually going into the wording of the bill. I think that, a family having concerns about wanting to, talk about sex education at home with their kids and not in the school system is totally legitimate. And I think the family should absolutely have the decision they should be able to make that choice for their family and for their kids. Where I think that we've not talked about as much with this bill is that the bill gives families that option already. So I do think it mostly comes down to funding. There's a lot of families who do feel like they wouldn't want their kids to participate in this, and that's totally fine. But it seems to me that it's more based in, well, if we're not participating, then we don't want to be funding it. And that's another valid conversation to be having. So yeah, I don't think that the opposition to the bill is illegitimate in any means. I think it's very well-founded. But I do think when we're talking about the merits versus the downsides of it, we do need to be talking about, like, what is actually in the bill, and not, what we're summarizing it as.
Gotcha. All right. Appreciate that. It'd be tough to fully see what's in there when you're passing it at 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's what happened.
Throwing that out there. All right.
Tracy, I guess it's 8:57. Just a couple of minutes left of the program. It's been since 1990 that we've had a Democrat in this office. You've got a lot of people that are against the sex ed bill, a lot of folks that don't want to wear a mask, and a lot of folks that do not like the governor. They're listening right now. Why should they vote for you? Tell us. We're all in an elevator together. Why should they vote for you?
So I feel like my primary role in trying to represent our district is really to represent our district broadly. I think that where things have been lacking for our district has been because we have been advocating for certain aspects or certain facets of our district and overlooking the big picture. I think that I have a background that allows me good perspective, to be quite honest, on what the pulse actually is throughout our district. I interact with families on a day-to-day basis. I have my own kids here affected by both the pandemic and the school system. And I think that I also have both the creativity and the training to come up with unique solutions, which are going to be needed as we move forward, both with tackling the pandemic and having things evolve here with our agriculture and our industry as we move into the future. I think it's difficult to say that things wouldn't be changing, with technology making the advances that it has recently. And I think I offer unique training to help facilitate those sort of changes moving forward.